Hi everyone and welcome to the first in a series of videos we're going to do exploring the archaeology of sites relating to World War I and the War of Independence in Ireland. A lot of these are going to be around Cork, but hopefully we'll see some of them on the entire island as well. The purpose behind these videos is to show people just what an amount of archaeology survives relating to these events. These are landscapes that we haven't really looked at archaeologically in Ireland, but are really important for understanding how these early 20th century events shaped the country in later years. For this first episode, we're here in Aghada in County Cork on Cork Harbour, where we're going to look at some of the remains relating to the United States Naval Air Station that was based here in 1918, and talk a bit about some of the history associated with the site. The United States entered World War I in April of 1917, and it was only a month later before the first of many US warships sailed into Cork Harbour. They were going to be stationed in Queenstown, now called Cove, which is just across the harbour from where we're located now. That first detachment was 6 ships, but there would be nearly 100 before war's end. Their role was to protect transports taking American troops across the Atlantic to France and general convoys from German U-boats. As another element of that defence, in 1918, the United States Naval Air Service bases began to open at locations around Ireland. And we're at the major one here, their headquarters in Ireland at Aghada, which was the Queenstown United States Naval Air Service base. The pillars that we have here mark the entrance to that base, and we can see that they say US Naval Air Base and 1918 on the lozenge. We'll go inside now and have a look at some of the sites related to this base and discuss their operations. Before taking a look at a couple of the surviving elements of this site, it's worth noting that it's far from forgotten in the local community. Much of the site is now occupied by the Lower Aghada Tennis and Sailing Club, and as we can see here, they're very well aware of the history that their site has. We're now standing on the interior of the airbase, looking across Cork Harbour towards Cove, or Queenstown as it was known in 1918. That was where the commander of the US Navy was during the war, and also where the Royal Navy were based. Had we been here in 1918, we would have been looking at dozens and dozens of US military vessels in front of us. The purpose of this base was to launch flying boats to cooperate with those vessels in anti-submarine warfare. They flew Curtiss H-16 flying boats out of here, and it was the central location where all the pilots who operated at US Naval Air Service bases in Ireland were trained. This is far from the only one. There's another one on Whiddy Island in Bantry Bay in West County Cork, another in Wexford on the southeast coast, and yet another in the northwest coast in County Donegal. There was also a kite balloon base in Bantry Bay operated by this service. Had we been here in 1918, we'd have been surrounded by more than 1,000 US personnel who were dedicated to putting these planes into the air and operating against the German U-boats. The base here extended for hundreds of meters along the shoreline. It was far from just a patrol station. It was also the headquarters of Commander Francis McCrary, who was in charge of the US NAS in Ireland. It was a supply depot and it was a repair depot. 6 large hangars operated here where the planes were repaired and where they were serviced from. Also, cottages like those behind us were taken over and used by the US forces during their time here in 1918 and 1919. It's worth noting the economic boom to the area that developing this station brought. It was largely built by local contractors, and so there was a huge benefit to the people of Aghada and East Cork in having the US military here. The concrete footings of some of the hangars and the ancillary buildings relating to this site can still be seen in the fields that surround us. The base was completed in March 1918, but they had one difficulty: they had no planes. Those planes arrived in crates to a depot on Sir John Rogerson's Quay in Dublin, where they had to be taken to the different sites around Ireland and then constructed on site. So it was the very last day of September in 1918 when the first operational flight took place. It left from this slipway right behind us. Photographers captured that occasion, and those images still survive today. Ultimately, the US NAS would fly some 760 operational hours around the Irish coast. In that time, they would bomb 3 oil spills and claim to attack 7 German U-boats, damaging 2 so extensively that they had to return to port. It was a fine record for just a few weeks of operational service. The presence of thousands of sailors in the area had a major social as well as economic impact. One of these was romantic. Dozens of local women married US sailors during the course of the war. Indeed, the relationships that they struck up wasn't always welcome in local circles, and in Cork it led to some violent clashes, which we'll discuss in a later video. But we're here now at Aghada Catholic Church, where in 1918, 21-year-old local girl Margaret Smith married Ray Wells, a native of South Dakota and a quartermaster in the USNAS base. Hers was just one of dozens of lives that were forever changed by the very brief presence of American forces here, and one that's worth remembering as we approach the centenary of the American presence in Cork. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll be posting some links below to our work on the Irish women who married US servicemen during World War I, and also some links to photographs that you can see of things like the US Naval Air Service in operation here during the war years. Please do consider subscribing to keep up to date with what we're doing on sites around the country.